said, I'll tell you why. I said, this time you did it right. During Ruby Ridge and during Waco, Texas, when we weren't prepared, they brought in complete violation of our laws, our Posse Comitatus laws. They brought in the military against civilians. Before it was over, our government murdered 86 men, women, and children. 86 American citizens. They were murdered. They shot them, they gassed them, and they cremated them, and then they destroyed the evidence. I said, this time you did it right. I said, you waited them out. You didn't call in the military. Had you called in the military, the militia would have been there. So there will be no more Waco. If there is, the blood of the guilty will mingle with the blood of the innocent, I assure you. I could spend hours on this. The militia, by the way, is in the Constitution. It is mentioned in the Constitution as a viable organization. Also in virtually every state constitution calls for militia. This is all the time I have on this subject. I think we're going to go to a question and answer. We have about 30 minutes. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and also Mr. Gunderson will do.
Questions? Anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? Yes, sir.
Significance of September 9th?
Oh, you mean the one Satanic holiday?
Yeah.
Just a minute, I'll get it out for you. Let's ask another question. It's in this book here, the Rob's. What page is that Satanic holidays on, Rob? 61. 63. You have that book in front of you. It's on page 63. And September the 9th.
Yeah, go ahead if you want. Yeah.
September the 7th, actually, the Feast of the Beast. Marriage of the virgins to Satan. Severe sadistic intercourse with the statue of Lucifer, or the Grand Master addressed to Satan. If you buy this book, it's got all the holidays in it. What I had up there was just a smattering of the basic holidays, and I was told by one of the people that attended the ceremony over in Vancouver that September the 7th was also a holiday that I left off my chart, which would be added. Yes, question?
You know what happened to Bill Cooper?
You mean the radio commentator down in Arizona?
I'm not sure. He wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse.
Yes. He had his own radio show. I don't know what's happened to him lately.
I read in Rolling Stone magazine that he died.
Oh, he did? I didn't know that. I know he was an alcoholic.
Had a heart attack.
Had a heart attack, yeah. Well, CIA work again, huh? Yeah, yes, sir.
The Oklahoma bombing, the FBI headquarters, were they not there in the 6th or 8th floor of that building?
No, that was, the FBI had their own quarters. Secret Service was there, DEA was there, ATF was there.
All in that building.
And the ATF agents, none of them were injured or killed. None of their children were in the nursery that day. Right after the bombing, a lady was standing across the street shortly after the bombing, within a few hours, and she noticed an ATF agent next to her and said, "Where were you?" And he said, "We were told we didn't have to come to work today. There was a bomb scare." They forgot to tell the other agencies, of course. But you know, there was a bomb scare all over the country because on the the day before, two of my associates went to the Social Security office in Las Vegas and to the Veterans Administration. They had armed guards on both locations, and they'd never had armed guards on there before. So the government had advance warning to this. In fact, the government was involved. Something I left off of it, by the way. McVeigh, you know, when you get rolling, sometimes you forget little details. McVeigh was, according to the government, flunked out of Special Forces. He did not flunk out of Special Forces. McVeigh was one of 10 outstanding soldiers, handpicked by the CIA, trained as a professional assassin, and also trained to work on the CIA drug operation. And I suspect he was a victim of the MK Ultra mind control program. Dr. Jolly West, head psychiatrist at UCLA, visited him both in Colorado and in Oklahoma. And this was a joint operation by the CIA and the Army. Question? Yes?
Ammonium nitrate would leave residue behind, wouldn't it?
It would leave residue behind, pockets of fire, and the workers would not have been able to go in the first several hours after the explosion because without gas masks, and they did.
Another thing is they decided it was ammonium nitrate bomb after they found ammonium nitrate in their farm, and then they decided it was in blue barrels once they found blue barrels on the farm. So they kind of cut the pattern to fit the cloth.
Here we go. Anybody there? Okay.
I have considerable information that revolves around the New World Order, and I have to concede that I concur if your information provides considerable addition to the information that I have at hand. Now, there are about 4 authors. Needless to mention that this gentleman here mentioned the Bill Cooper one. I read extensively his book and concurs with what he said. Several authors have made an attempt, and my question really is this, and some of them attempted to use certain events to try to speculate as to 2 things: the speed of the New World Order in terms of, are they just going to zoom in on us in a second, or is this a prolonged, gradual movement? And if there is some structure along those lines, I'd be interested in your information as to whether you'd like to speculate as to how and when these people may make a movement.
I have no way of knowing that. I'll make my comments, but I think Bill has his ideas too, so I'll let Bill comment on that also. I suspect, you know, we don't know for sure, but everything points toward a national emergency or crisis of some sort. There's a possibility, since they cut back on welfare checks last year, before last summer, I would say there's a possibility we could have a race riot this coming summer. Because people are having a difficult time economically, particularly the blacks and some of the Mexican folks and the minorities. So I would suspect that that's maybe what they have in mind. And once you have the race riots, then use that as an excuse to declare martial law, and it'll come all of a sudden, it'll come real fast.
Well, that's what I'm curious about. In fact, I don't know if anybody else has read this book. It's called Final Notes, written by a New Zealander, Barry Smith. I think he's reading this on the subject, and I think, again, just for speculation, I don't know, I'm certainly curious in some of the conversation we all tend to do that, because another question could be, what do we all do with this information? Just sit inside our don't know what happens. But Barry Smith did speculate. He said watch for some activity in the Asian East that could be precluded by a stock market crash. Go to the States, he said, and watch for this too. They'll make their move. Quote George Bush during the Iraqi war, the first one, when he referred at least 3 times to the New World Order, and in one situation referred to it as a new economic world order. That was my first exposure, quite frankly, to a politician saying that. But ever since then, I've been extremely suspicious of something happening. The economic world order suggests the possibility of a stock market crash, and then bingo, following up on the cashless society, and that would mean pandemonium overnight.
Yes, I agree with that. Good possibility. Cashless society, we're going to have smart cards in the United States where there will be no checking, no cash. Everything will be a computer in your hand. You run it through the grocery store checkout stand. It automatically debits your account. There's all kinds of possibilities. I think it's building up fairly rapidly now. For years it didn't build too rapidly, but there's going to be, in the New Year's Eve of 1999, it's already been announced, world leaders, including George Bush, will be in Egypt at the pyramids and in celebration of the year 2000. Bill, do you want to comment on anything?
Yeah, no, Ted's covered it pretty good. The only thing I'd like to mention is a lot of people say catastrophe is going to happen at so-and-so date and time. There's nobody that can predict exactly when it's going to happen. All I can say is it is going to happen, and it's not too far down the road, and it'll come probably when we least suspect it. The only advice I've got is educate yourself, educate all of your friends, and be prepared. I mean, I used to be a Boy Scout leader. Be prepared is the best motto I've ever heard in my life. That covers all. Grit your teeth, unless things change drastically. It's coming.
Any more questions? Yes.
Does anyone have any credit cards that go beyond the year 1999?
I don't.
Like what happens after that?
Let me see. Does anybody in the audience have any? That's an interesting question. You do?
I don't, but I think you're ignoring the obvious. What about January 1st, the year 2000, when all the computers crashed?
Well, I don't think we're ignoring that. I think we're all aware of that. That may be divine intervention too, you know.
Yeah, but there's a perfect way, an opportunity to bring about the New World Order.
True. But they won't be able to function either. We won't be able to function. They won't be able to function. So that'll be yes. Jerry?
Card.
Huh?
01.
In 2001?
Yeah.
Do you belong to the New World Order Society? Gary is a therapist, I assure you. I had the pleasure of meeting with him and his wife, Seven, and I assure you he's not one of them. 2001, well, that shoots that theory down, huh? Yes, sir.
Is there any militia groups in Canada?
No comment. What can I say? I'm not here to discuss that information. If there is, that's hooray for Canada. That's all I can say. But I can tell you about militia groups in the United States. By the way, a lot of people have asked how many militia people we have in the United States. People kick around numbers all the way from 150,000 to who knows where. Again, these are these experts that say that we have X amount. Nobody really knows. The militia people don't really know how many people we have. The militia people who are directly and indirectly involved in the Patriot movement goes into the millions. When the balloon goes up, how many we can depend on, it'll be quite a few. That's all I can say.
I think you'll see a lot of people come out of the woodwork on that effort. And any more questions? Yes.
During the Iran-Contra hearings, a senator from Texas asked Aldi North on 2 occasions about plans to suspend the U.S. Constitution, and he was shut down by the chairman of the hearings. I was wondering if you could expand on that at all.
I don't know anything about it, but I know that Ollie North is not a great American. I know that he's involved in the drug operation in Central America. Chip Tatum, ex-CIA Black Ops, one of my sources, has told me that he's personally had conversations with Ollie North, that Ollie North was directly involved in setting up 5 drug camps in Central America, was involved himself. And as far as that conversation is concerned, I just can't comment. I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
I know. I'd rather not say anything.
Yeah, right. We tried it. Yes.
The 2 FBI agents in charge of Ruby Ridge on that campaign, what happened to those fellows?
Do you know, Bill?
I forget the names. They were decorated. Lon Hiroshi, who put a bullet hole in Vicki Weaver's head while she was holding her baby at the door, by the way, is now on trial. He got a medal for that, along with a couple other people. Now, going to Ruby Ridge a little bit, that was unreal. Here's a man who was out in the boonies, wanted to be left alone. They have him down as a white supremacist, by the way. He is a separationist. He was just wanted to be left alone from the mainstream USA. And his wife was murdered. No other way about it. Lon Hiroshi said that he can put bullet holes in a quarter at 200 yards. And he accidentally blew a woman's head off at about the same distance. Plus the fact his son, I believe it was Sammy, was running back after the shooting started. They shot him in the arm, spun him around, and he was running back.
Shot the dog first.
Yeah, shot the dog first, yeah. But spun Sammy around and shot him in the back. A 14-year-old boy. Our people did that. They gave them medals. So now you kind of wonder why the militia is starting. It's not just the militia that's starting it, but this is given us. So, does that answer your question?
I just wondering if those two fellows are active still with the FBI, but I think.
Lon Hiroshi right now is on trial in Idaho. I can't understand how they're doing this. They said he's going to be tried in federal court under Idaho laws. And how that's going to work, I have no idea. That's two separate entities. I don't think anything's going to happen to him.
I smell a rat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More cover-up as far as I'm concerned. Yes.
Back to the Franklin cover-up there, the two youngsters, Paul and Alicia, were they not murdered for testifying later on?
No, they're both alive. But Alicia's brother was suicided, and Troy Bonner, who recanted, his brother was suicided. When we say suicide, you know what that means. Yeah, heart attack, suicide, Arkansas, whatever you want to call it.
Early caller.
Yes. Yes.
It's more of a statement than a question. Everyone keeps saying, when is this going to happen? And this is going to happen, going to happen. I personally think that with people like you, which we really appreciate spreading the word, enough of us know about this, they think they're going to release those tests, but that doesn't mean that we can't stop it. And you keep saying divine intervention. I truly believe there's powers that be there are looking in on this, and I don't think that we're going to let them do this.
I hope you're right. Did you hear that in the back?
Yep.
Yeah. I hope you're right. I pray you're right. But that's why we're out here.
Yeah.
We're out here to educate. We had some very poor attendance on the West Coast, by the way, and this crowd is very encouraging to us. But like I said, we had 9 and 2 of them actually. 9 people attended the lectures in 4. But
We got sabotaged.
we got sabotaged. Yeah, people called the hall, and they said that that it was by invitation only, which it wasn't, and also they would not identify us as the speakers or me in particular. So you know,
I shared optimism on that one, and I have to apologize. I didn't want to give the impression of being defeatist. Mostly I was actually alluding to the possibility that there might be some suggestions along the line. In other words, I still feel handicapped at this point in time. Quite frankly, it's sitting duck. Because while we have this information, you know, and some of these power groups are pretty substantial, and the more information you get, the weaker you can. It overwhelms. And so it would take a lot of structuring, and it would take, from a sports perspective, a miracle, you know, in terms of people who are always last to know, that's the general public, to be able to do something about this. It's extremely difficult, and I don't have any suggestions offhand other than becoming a Canadian militiaman, quite frankly, but even that'd be tough at this stage to do.
Yeah.
Well, you do have one advantage over us Canadians. You do have rights. We have no rights. We have no property right. We have no right to a driver's license. We have no right to a pilot's license. We have no rights with anything. It's
I tell you what, our rights are very rapidly being turned into privileges. I'll give you an example on the gun issue again, which I'm well into. I have to have a permit to carry a concealed weapon. And this should not be according to our Constitution. I should be able to carry any weapon I want. And but they are quickly turning all of our rights into privileges. So that's one thing right there. Oh, okay.
We had yes, another question here.
Yeah, I'm curious, do the families of the victims of this Oklahoma bombing have any idea of this? I've been hearing this ever since it happened. I wonder have they got any idea?
You mean it's a government cover-up?
Yeah, the
I think they have an idea, but they're not vocal about it. I went back to one of the meetings, and the families were all the victims of the family members were there of the victims, and they were more concerned, very frankly, about getting paid the welfare checks, getting the checks that their husbands or their daughters or their wives had coming, and you know, that was the main theme of it. But interesting incident occurred. There were people planted there who riled them up. And some of the first ones that came up and objected to this meeting, I was there with Assemblyman Keyes, General Pardon, and some other individuals. We gave a press release, and there were some troublemakers in there, and they were obviously planted there. to stir up the relatives, and it worked. And a bunch of them ended up walking out with the agitators. They're pretty well organized. But in answer to your question back there in the back, sir, what I try to do is I try to get everybody to purchase my research. And if you can't afford it, go together, buy it as a group, get it up here, and make copies and distribute it. You know, I don't copyright anything I do. If it's got my name on it, you make copies and get it out. That's all I'm in the business to do, is to educate. So I hope that you will take these flyers back with you and get a group of you together, order it together. Everybody throw in $10 and get one of everything, and get the copies, and then make your own copies and get them out. I think it's important that we all know, and maybe if we're educated and have advanced warning, we're giving you some pretty good information here tonight. Maybe we can prevent this thing from occurring. I don't know, we can sure try, yes.
On your price list that you have up here, we send stuff out to California, that's U.S. funds, Canadian funds.
That's U.S. funds, so if you want to throw a few extra dollars in there, it'd be fine. Yeah.
I'd like to say one more thing about the militia. Before I close, a lot of people think that somehow or another we are supported finance-wise. Everything the militia people put out comes out of their pocket. So a lot of people say we're making money on the militia movement. Wrong, we're not.
Thank you. I just want to update you a little bit on militias around the world. There are citizens militias that have now formed in France, Sweden, Norway, Britain, Australia, the United States. Is it illegal in Canada? It's not in our Constitution. It's not legal, but it's not illegal. There will be a constitutional challenge to start up a Canadian volunteer militia. Also, too, after the American people found that their federal government had lied to them about the Oklahoma bombing and blaming the American militia movement, the militias rose in the United States from 300,000 to 12 million members in a year and a half. That was in 1996, and it's growing by every month. The militias across the United States involve both men and women from all walks of life, and I can too verify that they're not terrorists. They're your everyday citizens that are concerned very much about our future and our welfare under this new world order. There is a lot we can do. These big boys of the trilads that are in Canada, that are controlling our government and our resource companies, can be brought down. All that needs to happen is that they be brought forward into the public light and exposed for who they are. We can stop this new world order. They don't have to win. It doesn't have to be that way. Thank you.
I'm not sure. I believe we have a closing time of 10 o'clock here. Is that right? Okay, which gives us about 5 minutes. Personally, myself, I would like to say I'm glad I came to Canada. I'll be honest with you, when Ted called me up and said, hey, let's go to Canada, I figured, well, hey, this is going to be fun. It's kind of a lark. This has been an education in more ways than one. I've been to Canada a couple other times. It's a fantastic place. And I hope I come back again. I hope they let us come back again. When I'm coming in here the first time, I wasn't sure if we're going to make it at all. But anyway, you've been a fantastic audience. I hope we've give you a little information you can use, and hope to see you around and all this good stuff. And here's Ted.
And I want to also mention, I'm really impressed. You people are fantastic. I really enjoyed meeting and visiting with you. I'm impressed with your countryside. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And particularly your teenagers. I'm so impressed with your teenagers. I'm proud of you folks for what you've done with those kids. I'm sorry to say our teenagers are a mess alongside your Canadian teenagers. That's the future of the country, you know. And so anyway, thanks for the reception. Thanks for everything. Be sure to educate yourself. Buy one of everything, split it, share it, send it to 5 people, have them send it to 5. And it'll get out pretty soon. 1 million people will have copies of these reports. Thanks a lot, folks. Don't forget that Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phelps will be here, I think, next month sometime. private corporation, and it's a privately held stock. And you know, we pay income tax to the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, every year. Excuse me, the money we pay to the IRS goes to the Federal Reserve. It does not go toward paying off the national debt in America. It goes toward paying the interest on the national debt in America. And the Federal Reserve is part of the International Monetary Fund, World Monetary Fund, which includes banks in the Warburg Bank in Germany, Gunderson Bank, London, Rome, Italy, and New York, Chase Manhattan Bank. These are the big boys. These are the boys, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we're talking about POWs now. This is another area that I'm not real sure about, in that I don't quite understand it, but I think I do at the same time, but I don't have the documentation. We left behind in World War II 35 to 50,000 GIs in Russia. We've never made an attempt to get them back. In the Korean War, 83 to 8,400 GIs were left behind, never made an attempt to get them back. Vietnam War, Southeast Asia, around 2,500, never made an attempt to get them back. In fact, our government says they are no longer alive, do not exist. They do. We have absolute documentation that they have lived in recent years. And I have information from my inside sources of the CIA that the CIA sent a hit team into Southeast Asia to eliminate them, to ensure that they would not be identified and later made to embarrass U.S. politicians. Why are they doing this? I can only say that it's probably because the New World Order wants to reduce the world population to 500 million. The population in the United States would be 20 million. The population in Canada would be 3 million. You're what, 29 million now? 30 million? And because they want to make sure that their elite have enough food so that they can live for years and years and years. And also, I might mention also that in America, and I can't say this is happening in Canada, because ever since I've been here it's been cloudy and I can't see up beyond the clouds. But in America, but I love it here, by the way. I'm really impressed with Canada. I love the people. I'm really impressed with your teenagers. They're so nice and neat. Ours wear baggy pants, run around smoking dope, and it's unreal. But in America, there are what we call contrails. And I have a radio talk show. By the way, you can probably pick me up if you have a satellite. In fact, I know you can. Some Canadians are listening to me. It's on the back of the flyer that was passed out to you. I'm on a satellite that's transponder 1 Galaxy and so on and so forth. Anyway, I'm receiving reports from all over the country, New York, Los Angeles, North Dakota, Colorado, Wyoming, Louisiana, Virginia, Nevada, that jets flying very high altitude are leaving contrails. This is condensation trails from jets. A normal contrail will dissipate in probably a short period of time. These contrails last for probably an hour or an hour and a half, and they end up expanding, becoming a larger cloud and larger cloud. There's a fellow in Wyoming who called in on my show and claimed that these are ethyl dibromide, which is a chemical that was banned in the United States in 1983, and it's a form of poison, of course. But the New World Order didn't want us to live, folks. If you're 40 years of age or over, and most of us in this room are, as I look around, we're not productive enough for them. And so I think many of us will be eliminated. And you know, the people that they're using against us, like the Satanic movement, we're going to get into the Satanic movement a little later on. The Satanists and the CIAs and the corrupt law enforcement officers, the people they're using against us, they're expendable too. What they don't realize is they're going to use them, and then they're not going to be around either. And I'm sure that there's some of you in the audience here, and you're going to go down with the rest of us. You're not going to make it either, if they have anything to say about it. There's some of us that will make it, and I think many of us will. Anyway, this is a story about the POWs. reported that they were left behind in North Korea. Well, actually, it's 83, 84. That's the next. No, hold those. Okay, let me just touch base on a couple of items here, and we'll take a little break. I think, let's see, we've been gone about an hour, so I'm going to come forth with a few little items. H.R. 1617 is a bill that was passed by Congress, and parents will have to collaborate with the government to raise their children. There'll be certain regulations and restrictions. We're going to talk more about children, by the way. I'm going to spend a lot of time on children in the next session. On October 28, 1998, the government will have the capability to tap all telephones in the United States. In 1999, a national ID card, before you can hire or be hired an individual, you'll have to check with Washington, D.C. and see if Washington, D.C. will approve of it. It's called a national ID card, like a driver's license. And we also have in America, and I know you have it up here, what we call outcome-based education. That's the United Nations courses that are advocated by our Department of Education. Outcome-based education is this. There are 3 levels of intelligence: the highest, the middle, and the lowest. And the schools are instructed to teach all the students at the lowest level. We talked a little bit earlier about camps. I've talked to an ex-con in the United States who told me that prisoners, federal prisoners, nonviolent, have for the last several years been working on converting a military bases to internment camps. They're paying them $5.50 a day. Also, we have a federal execution center in the United States in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's a new one. Houses 50 individuals. We haven't had a federal execution since 1963. Our prisons, we've built over 200 new prisons in the United States in recent years. The former civilian head of the prison system in the state of Texas, I was visiting with him on one occasion about 9 months ago. Asked him about the prison system in Texas. He said there are 8 brand new prisons in Texas that are staffed, but there's no inmates in the facilities. So they're staffed with no inmates there. So our military bases are being converted, federal execution center. We have underground cities in the United States. Our sources in Montana talk about huge caves that are housing huge Russian helicopters. There are sources that have told us about underground cities that are being built and have been built in America, specifically Kansas City and Las Vegas. There is a new machine, a laser machine, that goes at the rate of 10 miles an hour that goes through solid, hard rock. And we have been told that there is a tunnel that goes, a highway tunnel that goes from the East Coast to the West Coast. In Alaska, we have the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, it's otherwise known as HAARP, and it can jam global communications. It can disrupt human mental processes. It can change weather patterns, and it unnaturally impacts upon the Earth's atmosphere. And this is the shocker, folks. If you own a car that's been built in the last 6 years, they can push a button and your car stops in place. You don't go any place. There's a computer chip in the electric system. I own a 1987 automobile now, by the way. I just bought one. But I don't think it's going to do me good on the freeways of Los Angeles, because everybody else will be sitting there stacked up. I think the thing to do is buy a motorcycle. We talked about military operations with Russia. We talked about slave labor. 666, I'm going through my notes. I got a little ahead of myself. POWs. Here's something else that I think of interest to you. The Chinese family Rayati contributed several $100,000 to the Bill Clinton campaign in exchange for Clinton designating the 1.7 million acres in Utah and Arizona as federal property. What happened there is that Clinton, with the swipe of the pen, took the 1.7 acres away from private held property, people holding private property, the businesses and so forth, told them to get off, they're through. And as a result, we lost a valuable source of coal, and now that coal, the Lippo Group, has been organized in China by the Rayati family, and that coal is being imported in the United States through Senator Dianne Feinstein's husband, Mr. Blum. Typical politics. 9 million acres in California, 47 of the 98 parks, national parks in the United States, under the control of the United Nations. We think this is where many of the foreign troops are being held. We have a mass seizure of farms through the IRS in the United States. And one area that is of interest to not only us but also to you is the MK Ultra program. MK Ultra is a CIA mind control program that's been active for years. After World War II, German scientists, instead of going to Russia, many of them came over to the Northern Hemisphere. They were divided between Canada and the United States, and they continued their experiments involving genocide, and this included mind control programs, Manchurian Candidate, etc., etc. Now you recall back in the 50s when many of you Canadian citizens were used as guinea pigs on the LSD experiments. That was part of it. It was only until years later that you learned about it through various means. Americans were also victims of that LSD experiment program. People entered the hospital in Rochester, New York for minor operations and were experimented on by the U.S. government unknown to them. What is the MK Ultra program? How does it occur and what happens? It's a combination, by the way, the CIA is they're masters at this. I think they picked it up from the Germans and developed it further. But it is administered through a shock treatment, hypnosis, drugs, and torture. And the human mind has a defense device that will split. And if it's a traumatic experience, you won't remember it. Now, you remember Princess Margaret, her driver, can't remember what happened. That's typical of what would happen to the mind. And the CIA has been using it for years. They train individuals to be assassins, and they can pick up the phone and call that individual and say green, blue, red, whatever the signal is, the target word, the trigger word, and he automatically has a target. He snaps into one of his personalities and goes out and eliminates Mr. XYZ. And then he's programmed to commit suicide, usually. So there's no evidence. In the second session, we are going to talk a little about the taking away of guns and some of these mass murders that have occurred. And I personally feel, although I cannot prove it, that these are the result of MK Ultra mind control programs. There's another area that is of grave concern to me, and I'm sure it's of grave concern to you, and that involves the children that are being taken out of the homes in Canada and the United States. Most recently, I had a series of cases where the children are taken from the mother and the father, or the mother or the father, and oftentimes where there's a divorce, given over to the perpetrator, where there's allegations of sexual exploitation on the part of the child. And the Child Protective Services refuses to protect the child. The courts refuse to protect the child. And eventually the child is put up for adoption and disappears into the system. In the United States, each child is taken out of the home The county is given $24,000 per year. In my county alone, Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada, there were 22,860 some children taken out of the homes last year. This adds up to $68 million that the federal government gave to the county, Clark County. In special care children, where they have a health problem, etc., the state or the county can get up to $250,000 per year. And in order to sustain the system in the United States, it's necessary for 3,000 children per day to be taken away from the families. And I might mention that in many instances, as I said earlier, the children are being sexually abused. The courts don't protect the child, and the child slips into the system, in some instances never to be heard again. There's a book out written by Robert W. Nicholson. You want to stand up, Bob? Rob? There's Rob. Fantastic book. It talks about what's going on in British Columbia and right here in your own community. And this book is entitled Stolen Innocence. It talks about the child problem, pornography, pedophilia, Satanism. Let me just thumb through here and read a couple of items from the book itself. This talks about, this is on page 27, it talks about in 1995, British Columbia's Minister of Social Services was subjected to the scrutiny of a judicial inquiry. The inquiry was headed by the Honorable Judge Thomas Grove and was initiated by the tragic events surrounding the life and death of a 5-year-old young man named Matthew John Vadrul, I guess it is. The primary purpose of the inquiry was to investigate the competency and efficiency of the child protection services available to the children of the province. And what did the judge say? Judge Grove was quoted as saying, "There are many children in BC who are not being protected. There are many children who are suffering from abuse and are being neglected. The Child Protective Service, which is designed to protect these children, is having considerable difficulty in doing that, and in fact isn't doing it. There doesn't appear to be any organized way in which the ministry learns of these deaths." A former ministry social worker, now in private practice, supported the opinion of an individual named Carrie Simpson when she stated to the writer, quote, "How is anything ever going to change when all the government primarily did was allow the same people to remain in their same positions and simply change the name of the agency? All hell broke loose with the Canadian Airborne Regiment over the killing in Somalia. I can't understand why our government doesn't have the same concerns for the hundreds of Canadian children that are abused and murdered right here in Canada every year." During 1994, 33 children involved with the Ministry of Social Services died. Between November 1995 and July 1996, another 49 children involved with the Ministry of Social Services died. Of the latter children, 14 were in direct care of the ministry. The ministry was aware of complaints of abuse and neglect involving the other 35 children. 4 of the deaths are suspected or alleged homicide cases, with another 4 being classified as undetermined. Let me also read a little bit from chapter 4 on pedophilia, a big problem, not only here but also in the United States. The number of children maltreated in Canada on an annual basis would be 102,994, broken down into categories using the same formula. The calculation identifies the following figures and corresponding comparative figures that are suspected to be closer to reality. National case of neglect annually, 44,223. Suspected, 88,446. Now, national cases of physical abuse annually, 25,870. Suspected, 51,740. National cases of sexual abuse annually, 17,434. Suspected, 34,868. Some more figures, which I think you will find interesting. Page 79. By the way, this book is available at the table. be sure to take a look at it. How many do you have over there? A few that are available? Rob? Just a few, okay. This is a story about the judicial corruption. Judicial corruption is no longer simply an unconfirmed suspicion. It is considered to be a publicly recorded fact. In 1995, the Providence newspaper published a story which fairly clearly stated that an unidentified member of an organized crime syndicate had disclosed the fact that crime syndicates do have control over several judges in British Columbia, in fact, that the authorities appear to have concealed from the public for the same time. So, you have the same problem here as we have in America. And in closing this, before we take a break and then we'll come back, we'll talk about Satanism, talk more about international trafficking in children, involving children in Canada also. Let me just mention that we have a presidential directive, and it's Presidential Directive 25. And in the event of a crisis, the President of the United States has the power to pass this power on to, or the authority to pass the power on to, the Secretary General of the United Nations. Scary, isn't it? In closing on this first half of the lecture, let me mention this also. An article which I picked up in the United States on Canada before I left. Let me read from this article. It says here, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, MAI, means a world without borders. We're talking about Canada now, ruled by a virtual dictatorship of the world's most powerful central bankers, commercial banks, and multinational corporations. The article goes on and says, it's a world where small countries like Canada don't count for even less, and where citizens as voters would count for nothing at all because it wouldn't matter who got elected. Any government would be almost powerless to affect and improve our destiny. The world is an absolute certainty if we sit on our hands and do nothing. For those who find the prospect frightening and totally unacceptable, concerted action is required soon, very soon. It may be too late. Are any of you who are not familiar with this multilateral agreement on investments? You're all familiar with it. Understand it's already passed, is that right?
No.
It hadn't passed? In July? Well, I hope you're able to defeat it. By the way, folks, those of us who are involved in these issues, in closing the first session or the first part of the lecture, and those of us who are involved have difficulty paying the bills. My full retirement goes to my radio show and to research and to stay abreast of what's going on in these various fields. And there is a home-based business, if you're interested, that is helping me financially. And if you're interested, I'll give you the number. Give it a call and inquire into it, because the economics are such now and in the future that it's going to be more difficult to pay your bills, and I know that. So dial 1-760-730-3033 if you're interested in a home-based business. You can operate this right out of your home. I'll repeat that. 1-760-730-3033. Second half, we will talk about international trafficking of children. We'll talk some more about child protective services. We'll talk about satanic cults. We'll talk about preschools, which are designed all over the world for the satanic cults to get their hands on our 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old children, to indoctrinate them into Satanism. I personally worked in McMartin PreSchool case in Manhattan Beach, California. I have slides from that case. I have slides from an abandoned satanic site, which I think you'll find very interesting. So let's take a break and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Do you have a website?
Website's on the back sheet of the paper that you have. I'm not talking about about this water, but it reminded me of the fact that, I don't know about this, the best water I've had in a long time is in Canada, by the way. But in the United States, they're putting fluoride in all our water. Fluoride is something they use on rats to make them docile. And in addition to that, the contrails, which I mentioned, are going across the country, and if it's ethyl dibromide, that's a poison. And you know, every time we turn around, we have the government coming after us. It's a question of what are we going to do in the future? Well, I think right now we have to educate ourselves, educate each other. But in discussing the drug situation, in the 1950s, there were experiments, as I mentioned, on citizens, Canadian citizens and Americans. But, and also I've been told since I've been here that Kootenai Valley in the 1980s, during the Cold War with Russia and the United States, that there were experiments on the heavy population of Japanese and Russians there, because they figured that, you know, who cares about the Japanese and the Russian? And that came from a good, credible source. On the break also, I was talking to some gentlemen, and we mentioned the Desert Storm, and I didn't have it scheduled on the lecture, but I can tell you a little bit about Desert Storm and reduction of the population. It fits hand in glove with that. There were 28 nations that went to war, and of the 28, 27 inoculated their soldiers. The only nation that did not inoculate the soldiers was France. And by the way, the Canadian troops and the American troops were both inoculated. I don't know the report from Canada, but in America there were over 700,000 GIs. And right today, 4/5 of them have been washed out of the service because they can't even do a push-up. And they're being replaced by the new U.S. Army. So we got rid of the U.S. government got rid of some really well-seasoned, solid soldiers. And they came back, and their children were born deformed, their wives obtained this disease, whatever it is. And the story that we have, based on documentation from a nurse, Joyce Riley, is that they poisoned our boys, and they poisoned the other boys. That would include the Canadians too, by the way. And we have over 15,000 deaths that we know of from Desert Storm. So it goes on and on and on. The second half, I'd like to start out with Satanism. Satanism is a very important part of the operation by the New World Order. As you recall, I talked about Lucifer and the Illuminati. Well, they have used the Satanic movement to further their cause all along. And as a result of my involvement in the McDonald case, and my research thereafter, there are more than 3 million practicing Satanists in America. That comes from 3 sources. A source confidential source in South Bay, Los Angeles, 200,000 population, says there's 3,000 there. Lincoln, Nebraska, population 200,000. Another source, 3,000 there. Iowa City, Iowa, a third source, 100,000 people in Iowa City, Iowa, 1,500 there. So if you project those figures, it's 3.75 million Americans are actively involved in the cause. And those are sources, those 3 sources are people who themselves were actively involved. Now, I want to also mention that 3 separate sources have informed me that there are between 50 and 60,000 human sacrifices every year by the cults in the United States. I believe that. Death or murder for these people is like you and I having a drink of water. And there's some interesting background in connection with that. There are certain leaders in America who have been active for years. One is Michael Aquino, more generally referred to as Mike by a friend of mine. And the other is Anton LaVey. Michael Aquino and Anton LaVey were involved together in the Church of Satan in the Bay Area. They both have tremendous egos. Actually, Aquino Int'l had a Negro because he died recently. But Aquino split and established the Temple of Set and two separate groups. Int'l passed away, died October 29th of last year. That would have been a great honor to him to die on a Satanic holiday, which he did. Michael Aquino is still alive and kicking. Michael Aquino was walking through the Presidio one day, and a young boy says to his mama, "Mommy, that's the man that molested me at the preschool." And so the mother reported Aquino. There was an 18-month investigation by the Department of the Army, and of course nothing came of that. In the meantime, Aquino was transferred from the Presidio area, I mentioned Gorbachev's there now, they closed it down, to St. Louis, where he was placed in charge of the personnel files for the U.S. Army Reserve. And in the meantime, after the investigation cleared, Aquino came back to the Bay Area, continued with his Temple of Set activity, and about a year and a half ago, I heard that he had been actively involved at the University of Arizona in a confidential operation, mind control program that was classified on behalf of the U.S. government. So Michael Aquino continues his nasty, dirty work. He's appeared on Geraldo. I don't know if you recall the TV show about the late 1980s, where Geraldo did a special on Satanism. It was the highest rated TV documentary in the history of television.